JMS Sports, today I'm going to be talking about the early free agent signing period, as well as assessing the trades that some of these teams made. The top three, the Jets, Raiders, and 49ers, by far had the best start to free agency, in my opinion, and the Colts and Steelers threw up complete duds. I ranked them in the descending order from best to worst. I think the Jets, we'll start with them. They improved their team the most because you brought in a back. Isaiah Crowell didn't do very much. You had a weakness at linebacker. You brought in C.J. Mosley, who is a tackling machine. And you gave Darnold a new weapon with Jamison Crowder. He will help Anunwa and Robbie Anderson quite a bit. And you also gave him protection with Kelechi Osemele. I think Osemele's an all-right lineman. He's getting up there in age, but he's definitely still doable for right now, and I think that's a good move. Bell wouldn't have been a possibility had Anthony Barr not gypped them and gone back to the Vikings. I think that's a good deal. You didn't need necessarily two linebackers. You don't want to stack one side of the ball and not be able to do anything. It's been proven not to work. The Bears couldn't do very much in the postseason with it, and think about the Broncos, they didn't even make the postseason. Both those teams had pretty stacked defenses and couldn't do very much at all when it came down to crunch time. Now the Raiders made the big trade. They traded for Antonio Brown. I think they completely stole Antonio Brown for a 3rd and 5th round pick, especially when you look at the Odell Beckham trade. In my opinion, Antonio's better. He might be a little bit older. I think Odell's 27, 28, and Antonio's 31, but Antonio is still, in my opinion, the best receiver in football. And the Steelers threw up a dub with that because I'm sure the Browns trade was still there, but we'll get more into that later. They also brought in Trent Brown. He's going to help Derek Carr or Kyler Murray, whatever they seem to go with. And they still have their 3 first-round picks. They didn't give up that much, and it was a big deal, in my opinion. They also had some other minor improvements on the team that I'll go more into if this video gets enough attention. I'll go more into detail with every team. The 49ers, they improved their team a little bit. I think they overpaid with Quan Alexander for a little bit, but then they made the big trade to get Dee Ford. And that's really questionable with the Kansas City Chiefs, but Dee Ford's a game changer in my opinion. You're going to put him on rushing the edge with DeForest Buckner in the interior. You're going to have Quan Alexander, who's a pretty good tackler in my opinion. The defense was all right last year. I mean, it's a bunch of no-names for the most part. They've got Richard Sherman, but he's getting up there, but he's still pretty productive. So that defense is really going to help. They also brought in Tevin Coleman, who I think that's a more of an impactful signing than most people realize because Breed is a good runner. Not really that big of a threat out of the backfield for catching the ball. And that gives them that aspect, especially for Garoppolo coming back after that ACL injury. Getting as much help as you can is what they need to do. Now for the two teams that threw up duds. The Indianapolis Colts we'll start with. Although the Colts did sign Devin Funchess for a 1-year, $13 million contract, they haven't done much else. They are hosting a visit with Jay Ajayi, but a team that needed pass rushers, there's pass rushers out there that they're not even looking at. They had Ezekiel Ansah, didn't go for him. He hasn't signed. They still have the ability to, but Trey Flowers didn't even really make an effort at Trey Flowers, or it doesn't seem at least. Amongst others, the 49ers make that trade for Dee Ford. I'm betting that you could have swooped in there with your 2nd-round pick. That's 34. That's pretty good. It's almost a 1st-round pick to get a premium edge rusher. I mean, you could also get Justin Houston if you wanted, but he's a little bit older. But overall, the Colts didn't get worse, I wouldn't say. They did bring back Pierre Desir on the defensive side of the ball, but that's about it. Desir and Funchess. I'm not happy with that. There was so many names out there that we needed. Landon Collins, for example. You could have gotten Eric Weddle. You could have gotten Adrian Amos. You could have gotten Tyrann Mathieu, but they didn't. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I believe were the biggest flop of the offseason so far, they traded Antonio for nothing. You look at what the Browns offered for Odell Beckham, and you're telling me that same deal wasn't there for the Pittsburgh Steelers for Antonio? That's a joke. The Steelers just didn't want to trade him in the division, but you still traded him in the same conference. You're still going to have to beat Antonio Brown. I guess they were looking at it, maybe we don't have to play him next year, or only have to play him once. Put him to a worse team because the Browns are surging right now, but with what the Raiders did, they could still be a good team next year. They needed to address the secondary as well, and they didn't sign anyone really. They got Steven Nelson, but Steven Nelson did not have the best year last year. And their replacement for Antonio Brown is Dante Moncrief. Moncrief was a non-factor in Jacksonville, but he did have strokes as quarterbacks. But even with the Colts, it was a little iffy. So if I'm grading these offseasons so far, the Jets are like the Kings. They get everything they wanted, and they didn't have to give up very much. The Raiders are like the thieves. They steal shit, don't really care. Kind of goes along with their mascot, if I'm being honest. The 49ers, they did all right. They spent a little bit more money than they should have, but I think that they definitely improved their team. The Colts, I don't know if their GM had a heart attack during the early free agency signing period, but they didn't even seem like they were into a lot of people. I mean, if you're having a heart attack, at least come out and say it. But they left most of their fans in confusion on what they were doing. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, Steeler Nation, I hope you're happy with getting Antonio Brown out of there and Le'Veon Bell, but your team's going to be pretty terrible for the next couple years, and I don't have much more to say about that. Expect the Steelers to be dead, and that's just my opinion. You're not going to improve your team through the draft that much very quickly. And, yeah, so I'd give the Jets an A, the Raiders a B+, the 49ers a B, and then the Colts a D-, and the Steelers an F. But other than that, that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching the video, and leave a comment and subscribe.